All right, thank you, Ted. As Ted mentioned, Valerie Shuman, Shuman Consulting Group. Yes, I'm one of the people that's been working away in this space for over 3 decades at this point. And I share the excitement of the energy and momentum that we're really seeing as a lot of different pieces come right together. My job here this morning is to connect the dots before some of our previous conversations and the conversation today, and then the conversations that we're going to be continuing to have going forwards. If you want to go to the next slide, Ted. Maybe the next one after that. All right, so back in January, you've already heard people refer to the big workshop we had at the TRB annual meeting on RDI. And what we brought to that workshop was a set of challenges. There's a great deal of activity going on in all kinds of different aspects of the industry that have to do with RDI, but we wanted to really create a little focus. So for that conversation, we put forward 5 challenges. And you'll see the orange one right at the top there, truck parking info. We really thought that was something we could tackle within the Transcontinental corridor space, something that would really get after this year. You'll also see some of these other things that folks have been talking about, data exchanges, connectivity, all those kinds of things. But the thing we were thinking of at that time for Transcontinental corridors was truck parking. So what happened? Ted, you want to take me to the next slide? Okay. How did we even get to that set of 5 challenges? Well, we were really trying to come up with things that we thought would help us move forward towards key RDI deliverables. The why are we doing all this? So situational awareness, everyone needs to know what's going on when those rivers start to rise. Investment planning, where are we putting our resources? Responses, how are we going to work together to handle whatever's coming at us today? And transactions, in terms of optimizing services between all different kinds of users. And as we look at what's happening in the Transcontinental corridor discussions today, we see them focused very much on each of those 4 areas. Go to the next slide, Ted. So, in fact, it's not just focused on those areas. The transcontinental corridors are in a lot of ways leading the way because they are a natural home for very practical conversations. What do we need to share across jurisdictions, and how are we going to do that? But what has also come out of a lot of those conversations in the last little bit is some evolution from the thinking we had in January. Truck parking data is important. Everybody agrees on that. Everybody wants to see that. But so is major disruptions data. As things go different on the network than we were expecting, how are we going to handle those things? We really need to make sure everybody knows what's going on. Similarly, sharing with other public sector agencies is definitely critical. But so are those third-party vendors who are really an important communications channel out to travelers, and in some cases, an important source of information for the agencies. And the last piece, I know we've said data a number of times, but something that has really kind of bubbled up, there are a lot of existing event feeds out there from states, and there's a lot of information already available. The magic part that we now need to get to is the ability to actually share it with our neighbors really effectively, not just following maybe a standard of some type, but really harmonizing content and our understanding of quality to actually get interoperable data that can actually plug into any system all the way along any one of the corridors and actually work together. So this is kind of where we're finding ourselves in a very high level nutshell, and our panelists will give us a lot more detail on that as we go forward. Next slide, please, Ted. So how are we going to frame this up to kind of see progress and keep ourselves moving? At the January workshop, we asked everybody for milestones. What would you like to see done in the next year in these 5 challenge areas? And when we really looked at what came back, it all very neatly fell into 4 buckets. In some areas, we need to get smarter. There's things we just don't understand. in a lot of areas, we just need to make some decisions. We need to agree what we're trying to get done, and we need to agree how we're going to do that. Next step, of course, is it's nice that you all agreed, but then we actually have to make it tangible. We've got to get some demonstrations and tests out there and then deploy it. And I think you'll hear different pieces of this from the panelists as the conversations go on. Next slide, Ted. One other thing that has really sort of been bubbling to the surface as we've all been looking at this is what John was pointing at. We're looking at national level solutions, national network optimization, not a single Skynet that runs it all, but a system of systems that's actually going to optimize the way everything moves around in the United States. And so while we talk a lot about the coordination and harmonization within a corridor, which is already a major project, we also probably need to start thinking a lot about how are we going to look at things across corridors and create the consistencies that we need, that we actually get that opportunity to do a little national optimization in a lot of different dimensions. Next slide, Ted. So our questions for the day. And our panelists will be tackling each of these in various different ways of the next two panels. First step, I think you're all going to be pretty excited to see what progress has already been made. A lot has come together recently that builds on an enormous amount of work that had gone on before. Secondly, nice to have progress, but what's up next? What are we really going to see over the next 6 to 12 months that's going to help make all of this much more tangible? And then the last thing, we did ask everyone to think about that question. Great that you're working within the corridors, a lot of effort going on there. How are we going to get this to all come together at a national level? So with that said, I will hand it back over to Ted for the first panel.